What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Evo Bootcamp 2018.
Woo!
Woo! This is the series where we take you through just what it is to understand what's going on at Evo. It can be really overwhelming because there are 8 different video games being played across a weekend, and there are a huge amount of entrants, and of course there's a whole double elimination tournament going on for each and every single one of them. And Ivan, I'll tell you, today we have a special game because this is the only 3D fighter that we're going to be talking about at Evo 2018.
What? A 3D fighter?
What is that?
Whoa, it's a Virtua Fighter?
No, it's not. Virtua Fighter is long dead. We're talking about the one of the only surviving 3D fighters still in the game, even though there are 2 coming out. One later this year in Soul Calibur 6, and Dead or Alive 6 is coming out early 2019. But today we're going to be talking about the one at Evo, Tekken 7.
A 3D fighter obviously takes a literal third dimension to play, but also has a lot more dimension in terms of the gameplay. Instead of the 2D fighting stance where it's one single screen going back and forth and you can pin people against a wall, there's a whole lot more in terms of the space in which you can fight, and it also provides dimensions of different kinds of dodging and different things. Can you just kind of do a concise descriptor of what really makes a 3D fighter such a special experience?
Pretty much sidestepping.
Nailed it.
that would be it. A lot of things in terms. So a lot of the games, in fact, a lot of the games being played at Evo, and what you typically think of a fighting game is sort of like Street Fighter. It's a 6-button fighting game where you are in the same plane and you can only move back and forth, up and down. Now, when we get to talking about Guilty Gear Xrd and Blaze Blue, we'll see that there's a little more movement options in terms of the 2D fighter. But in terms of Street Fighter, you can move left, right, up, and down, right? And you can angle your jumps as well, of course. Now, when it comes to Tekken and 3D fighters, you don't really see so much jumping because you're not limited by that one plane of existence. So you end up seeing a lot of sidestepping, a lot of backdashing, a lot of forward dashing. Things get crazy because there's usually a lot more space being created between both players, and that comes into play in that the game is much more movement based.
So it is a lot more ground-based in terms of its movement in its original form, but the introduction of some 2D characters into the 3D space has changed a little bit of that as well. So in terms of that 3D movement, you get a lot of whiff punishing from sidesteps, so you can counter a clockwise move by moving in one direction, counter a clockwise move by moving in the opposite direction, and thereby creating the space that you need to punish a whiff. So if you get a clockwise kick, you move out of the way and are able to then punish your enemy because of the delay in being able to react with blocks or other kinds of evasion moves. So it does add a lot of ground-based movement, which makes Tekken a unique space, but there are a lot of things that can make that space sort of different. So you had the introduction of Akuma, who is a 2D fighting character brought into the 3D realm, which really revolutionized how it was played.
Yeah, I would say he was a huge... a lot of Tekken players didn't really know how to deal with him when he was first introduced back in, I believe, 2015, when the game came out in arcades. And since then, players have been able to deal with him, and we see less Akuma play. But it was a really good introduction for Street Fighter players to get into Tekken, because Akuma has all the same moves as in Street Fighter, and so you already know the combos from there. But yeah, so Tekken is also instead of having 6 buttons at your disposal, you're only limited to 4 buttons. And you might think that that makes the game less complex, but actually, the game is so complex that each character has around 100 moves that you could throw out at any time. So that alone is enough to make your head spin. It's a crazy game, but I think it is the most rewarding game that's being played at Evo currently. I think this game has long legs, and I think the characters are all super cool. And I really once you start understanding what's going on in the Tekken at high level Tekken matches, you really start to like the game even more and more. But yeah.
Agreed. I would say that through my introduction into the space of Tekken 7 by watching your gameplay as well as some professionals at at least a slightly higher level than we are. Yeah. It's been intriguing to see the amount of different kinds of moves and then move cancels or blocks and different things. One of the things that I think is pretty interesting about Tekken 7 is the amount of throws and throw cancels that you can do. So the combinations of being able to punish enemies is, I think, a lot wider ranging in Tekken 7 than it is in a lot of games, and that is attributed to that wider selection of moves and also the kind of spacing and movement that you have.
Definitely, yeah. So knowing a matchup in Tekken 7 takes a much longer than, say, in Street Fighter, I would say, because you have to understand that this person can throw out 100 different moves at you, and you need to know how many. You need to understand the frame data that goes into that. So we talked a little bit about frame data last week. Of course, just to reiterate, that's just how long a move is active. So how many frames a move is active. Certain moves are active for longer. And then what's the recovery time in which you can strike after that? That's important to know. It's important to know what's the recovery time on a move after it's been blocked or after it's been hit. So that's sort of what I'm talking about when I say the word frame data. So understanding frame data is really critical in any fighting game, but I would say it's very important in Tekken 7 as well. Now, Tekken has actually been at Evo, not Tekken 7, but in some form, Tekken has been at Evo since 2004, starting with Tekken 4. So it's gone through 3 of the Tekken games, even though I believe Tekken 3 was the most popular Tekken game. I guess, I'm not sure. I didn't play Tekken back then. This is actually the first Tekken game I've ever played. But Tekken 7 has been at Evo since 2015. Because the game was released in arcades in Korea and Japan and places like that. And consequently, this is why there's such a dominance in the player base that is mostly just South Koreans, and maybe I think there's one Japanese player in the top 8 thrown in there. So
if we look at the top 8, the top 6 are Korean, with the one U.S. player tied for 6th place, and then the 8th player is Japanese. And then guess what? 9 and 10, both Korean as well. So it does seem to be a uniquely Korean-based fighter.
Definitely.
I saw a video in which Saint said that it just kind of was the fighting game in the arcades. Everything else kind of filtered out, but this is the one that has remained as the mainstream fighting game within Korea, which is an interesting one because it is that 3D fighter as opposed to any of the 2D fighters.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so much played in Korea that they even named one of the more advanced techniques, or one of the most useful advanced techniques that you can learn, Korean backdashing. So this is where you you can backdash in Tekken and in most fighters, but you can cancel this backdash out by crouching, and then you can cancel the crouch out with another backdash. So that allows you to backdash much further, creating space between you and your opponent, and then allows you to figure out what you want to do after that. So that's why it's an incredibly useful move.
So although Tekken has been at Evo since 2004, Tekken 7 hasn't been around for that long, especially in this form. So Evo 2017 was the first time we saw it on PC and consoles.
Yeah.
And so this will only be the second year that it's console form.
Right, so exactly. So if you actually look at the number of entrants since 2015, you see a gradual rise in entrants, and then so you have 458 entrants in 2015, which is not that many for Evo, especially in 2015. Then you get about 100 more entrants when we go to 2016. So the game has gained some popularity by then. But then the release to PC and console really blew up in Tekken's face and made it a very popular game. So by then, in 2017, last year, we got 1,286 entrants into Evo. So that allowed this game to be much more popularized, and is now going to probably be a mainstay at the Evo stage.
So with that jump from arcade to PC console, there was a slight difference, right? So now we have the 8 frames of input lag that was introduced from that shift.
Exactly, yeah. This was, I believe, implemented to compensate for online play. So, and the game is currently played on PS4s at Evo and at most major tournaments, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something that you have to factor in with most modern fighting games because of console and PCs.
So there you go. So it is, although it seemed ridiculous to me that 8 frames would be such a big thing, it does produce a lot of things, especially at the highest level where your input commands are so precise.
Yeah.
So you have to adjust your playstyle based on that kind of input lag.
Right. I mean, coming from, if you were so happen to have been playing Tekken for 2 years on arcade, and you've just day in, day out, that's what the Korean players would do, right? They just go back to the arcade and keep playing, and then have to play on the PS4 with the 8 frames of input lag. And then just having to adjust that much is actually a huge factor in how these people have to play.
So, in terms of what this gameplay style is like, we have some things that are introduced into this Tekken title with the rage drives and rage arts, but talking about the basic gameplay style, what are we looking at in terms of how players are going to situate their characters or different things? So we know about blocking styles and defensive moves. In Street Fighter Season 2 and then Season 3 is a lot more about offensive gameplay style. Is it the same in Tekken?
Tekken I think Tekken is more of an elegant dance in terms of shifting from defense to offense. You can get rushed down really quickly in Tekken if your opponent has the read on you and senses any sort of fear in you. So then it's crazy. You'll
then
see,
you get the front dashes.
Yeah, you'll see
people are stunting on you. Yeah.
You might see someone trying to style on you by just dashing into your face because they know you're gonna be blocking, or they know you want to block at that point. So they can just dash in your face and you're not gonna do anything. So there comes a level of mind games. But I believe Tekken has a much more complex defensive system than Street Fighter. Street Fighter, you basically have to block a bunch of mix-ups. You're gonna blocking from high to low, and you can tech throws, so you can break throws. Aside from that, you don't really have that many options, unless you're talking about Street Fighter Third Strike, in which point there's a parry system, which is actually really cool. In Street Fighter V, Ryu has parry, which he can input by pressing medium punch and medium kick together at the same time at a specific timing. But not many other characters have parries in that game. So the cool thing Tekken has is the universal low parry in its defense, in terms of its defensive capabilities. So you can low parry a lot of low moves. So a move like a kick or a crouching punch, you can parry that, and you can get a full combo off of that. So, but you have to understand whether or not your opponent's going to throw at that low.
And what's interesting about Tekken, again, with that huge move set, is that not only do you have to recognize the attack that's coming in, you have to react quick enough to what that attack is. So these players that are playing at the highest tier have immense reaction time and a high level of skill, which is something that I think a lot of players are complaining, a lot of high level players have complained about in terms of Street Fighter, is that a lot of the skill has been dumbed down in order for accessibility, but in Tekken, a lot of even the highest tier level players have said that the accessibility and the highest tier have kind of preserved in a more elegant balance.
I agree. I think this game is really well designed. And another thing I guess I wanted to point out between the differences in defending in Tekken and defending in Street Fighter. In Street Fighter, you'll typically, the safest way to block is to do a crouching block, because a lot of moves you can be opened up really easily if you get hit by a low move. So again, we've talked about in the past, there in a lot of fighting games, specifically Street Fighter and Tekken, we'll talk about their overheads. So there's highs, there's mids, and then there's lows. So if you're blocking high, in Street Fighter you can block highs and mids, but not lows. And if you're blocking low, you can block mids and lows in Street Fighter. The difference between Tekken and Street Fighter is that you don't typically want to block low in Tekken if you want to use the safest block at the point. Because in Tekken, if you're blocking high, you can block highs and mids, but not lows. But if you're blocking low, you can only block lows. You can't block mids. So as a consequence, mids become the most powerful moves in your arsenal. And that's a really easy way, or that's understanding when to throw out a good mid is really key to your offensive attacks. Yeah.
There you go. So, Julien, as we get in through our analysis of Tekken gameplay a little bit, not getting into the character-specific kinds of things, but in the general things, how is this tournament structured? Because we talked about the 2 out of 3 and then 3 out of 5 with Street Fighter. Is it the same thing for this at Evo?
So Tekken 7 and all Tekken games have the difference in the structure of the rounds is in Street Fighter it's 2 out of 3 in the game. So you're gonna have to beat them twice in the game in order to take a point. In order to take a whole game, which is a 2 out of 3 set. So in Tekken, it's 3 out of 5, and there's 60 seconds. Those 60 seconds end up going by pretty quickly. So in Street Fighter, you typically don't really see many timeouts ending rounds, but in Tekken, you'll actually see a lot more, because the rounds are a lot shorter than Street Fighter. So that being said, it's 3 out of 5 rounds to take 1 point in a set, and it's 2 out of 3 because these sets typically go a little longer. So it's 2 out of 3 throughout the whole tournament, as opposed to Street Fighter's 2 out of 3 until top 8 and then 3 out of 5. I believe that's how it is, or at least that's how I saw it on the Evo website.
Well, that's the only thing we can go by. So again, this is the double elimination bracket?
Yes, it's the same bracket as Street Fighter. You start off.
So you can get a little luckier if you keep going in the winners bracket.
Exactly.
A little harder if you get into the losers bracket, and the loser in grand finals will still have to win those 2 3 out of 5 sets.
Definitely. We have I believe grand finals is 3 out of 5. We discussed how a double elimination tournament is structured in our previous video. You should go check it out there, so we don't repeat ourselves too often. Yeah.
So going into Evo, and the amount of Tekken 7 has been out for a while. It's changed from arcade to PC, console, and arcade. So what are the top characters to look out for in the current patch?
So in Tekken 7, there are so many characters, and you could really make an argument for to any character in the game, because the game is sort of designed so that it's very easy to transition from character to character, because they all have similar moves. Every character has throws. Every character has a down forward, like a launcher, a similar launcher. Every character has a hop kick. But that being said, some characters have the clear advantage over other characters. So the characters I suggest you be on the lookout for are Brian Fury, Dragunov. Dragunov is going to be played a lot in the top 8. You'll also see a lot of Jack 7. He is a very popular character. Devil Jin is super high on the list as well. You'll see Paul, Kazumi, Xiaoyu, and Fang as well. I think those are the top characters in the game currently, and I think you'd be hard to argue otherwise.
So if you look at the SRK Data World Rankings for Tekken 7 at the moment, you can see that 2 of the top 8 players have Dragunov, including JDCR, who is the top player. Dragunov is his main, and 3 of the top 8 are actually Jack 7. So that's a pretty intense promotion, endorsement of those characters. Personally, I'm a fan of Dragunov.
Dragunov is awesome.
Although the character art of Jack 7 is kind of my favorite. He kind of looks like Android 16.
He does look a little like he does, because he has the orange mohawk. Yeah,
he's got that mohawk. He's got the big buff body. I kind of like his character art. But Dragunov has the Russian. He's my fave. Let's see that Spetsnaz strength come to power. What are some of the examples of, like, let's say a Dragunov? Why is he a more selected character than some of the other ones?
Now, I mean, typically a lot of characters, in terms of good characters in fighting games, you're looking for characters that have moves that are fast, but also very convertible. So in Tekken 7, you want to move. A fast launcher is really key. A lot of characters have their, I believe it's 12 frames is the fastest move you can throw out, I believe, in Tekken. So that would be your jab. Or maybe I think it's either 10 frames or 12 frames. I can't remember at the moment. So you really want options to mix people up in Tekken as well. And Dragunov has really powerful, I forget the input. I don't play Dragunov, but he has this move where he basically sweeps with his arm, and you can get 2 of those moves off. So, and it's a low hit, so that allows you to mix people up. So once his gameplay style, as far as I can tell, because I don't play Dragunov, because I want to lose at Tekken, but it seems to me he creates space, he gets a combo, and then that results in a knockdown, right? So the way you want to open them up, but then after that, once you've knocked your opponent down, they have to guess whether or not to block high or block low, because they're getting up. So Dragunov has a lot of options to mix your opponent up that are all really powerful moves, and you can continuously sort of put them in this vortex where they have to guess, am I going to have to block high or low? And I think that's why Dragunov is a really powerful character in this game.
Is Jack 7 the same kind of character?
Jack 7 he's a huge character, so you would think he has a huge hitbox, but it's actually his arms are like out in front of him, so he ends up having incredible range on a lot of his moves, and it's always, whenever I go up against him, it seems as if you have to hit his body, which is behind his arms, and his arms are really far forward. That's how I imagine it, so it seems like you're fighting Muhammad Ali at that point. He's always keeping you at arm's length. Jack 7 has a really good... his moves, like I said, have a lot of range. His kicks aren't that good because he's got stubby legs, but his arms are so long that he has a lot of great launchers, and like Dragunov, he has a pretty good low attack and some mid attacks that are really powerful. And that's typically what you look for in a Tekken character. Does this character have good mids? Does this character have good lows? Because it becomes really scary if you have to end up blocking those moves, all the time. Because typically you want to block high in Tekken.
So it's the good mix-up, because, again, the blocking system where you can block down low, you will be hit by some of the other kinds of moves. That is important. What about a character that has excellent parrying systems? Is that universal low parry? Is that all characters have that kind of ability, or are there some characters that are better at parrying, and that's the kind of way they play?
All characters have the low parry, and a few characters have Okay, so it gets even more complex. Some characters can parry punches. Some characters can parry kicks. But there are very few characters that can parry both, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a separate input for both of them. So I think Fang has a punch parry. So, and then he has, but I don't think he has to guess which side you're punching. So then there's some characters that have to guess that you're going to throw out a right punch, and then they have to parry the right punch. It's not just a universal punch parry. I believe Fang has a universal punch parry, though, if I'm not mistaken.
So you have the left punch, the right punch, the left kick, the right kick. You have to, there's so much of a mix-up of those. You have to know how to, if your character can parry all of that. Then you've got the throws, and you have to break those throws based on what those throws are. So there's a lot of things that you need to know, not only for your character, but in terms of what the other characters, especially in the meta, are going to do to defeat you. Exactly. Now, are there any surprise characters that you think could be thrown out as a kind of wishing game of trying to get into the opponent's mind, or are they all going to be kind of these top 8 characters?
I think the person that... So I think the 2 people to be looking out for in terms of characters switching around would be, or 3 people actually. JDCR has been known to pull out the Heihachi every now and then. Heihachi is the main character in Tekken, in the Tekken series. So it's always really hype when he pulls them out. But Heihachi is not... So in that case, you would have to now know the Heihachi matchup. So it can be a way to throw his opponent off guard. So I believe that's why he uses Heihachi. But that being said, a lot of characters that we've mentioned earlier in the top 8 are just sort of outclass Heihachi. But again, you would have to know the matchup and be prepared for it on stage. The other person to look out for, Chanel, he has been known to use Akuma, and Akuma's from Street Fighter. We talked about him last week in Street Fighter V. He's really sick. In this game, he's really cool too. And that completely mixes everyone up because Akuma has projectiles, so that can be crazy. And he also has his meter from Street Fighter, so no other characters really in this game have an energy bar on the bottom except for Eliza and Akuma. So they can end up using, once they've built up bar, it ends up becoming... you'll hear the commentators typically say, "Oh, it's Akuma. He has meter, so he's still in the game. Even if he's low in health, he's still in the game." So, because Akuma becomes way more deadly once he has meter, he can start canceling his moves in all sorts of different ways to extend his combos and do a lot more damage.
Excellent. So, in terms of these players that you've mentioned. A couple of them are the top players to look out for. Let's get a rundown of the top players. Again, Evo with 1,300 or 1,400 entrants going to be probably likely in this year's Tekken 7. Who are some of the top 8 players to look out for?
Yeah, we already mentioned JDCR. He is the best. Well, he's currently the top ranked Tekken 7 player in the world right now. Although his past couple outings in terms of the tournaments he went to, he didn't really place amazingly. So at Combo Breaker 2018, he placed 9th. At Battle Arena Melbourne, he placed 5th. At Beast Arena Hong Kong, he placed 3rd. And so you'll see that a trend in where these tournaments are. They're sort of in Southeast Asia. That's where Tekken is typically played. There are, and as opposed to Street Fighter, there are a lot of tournaments in America. And of course, so these games are centralized around the player base. So you have to factor that in if you want to be a professional fighting game player. So the other one that he came in first in, which is really important though, is Tekken World Tour, the Korea Masters 2018. So that was a huge win for him, and that is basically the Bandai Namco sponsored tournament that they run. It's a whole circuit. They take it around the world, and he happened to win the World Tour Korea Masters segment of it. So that was a big win for him.
Yeah, probably that home crowd cheering him on.
Yeah.
An important statement to make in terms of, hey,
yeah,
I am one of the best players. I won Evo last year, and I will continue to be the champion.
Right. The next person to look out for is Nee. Now, he's had a really good year. He's from South Korea as well. I mean, we already mentioned there's a lot of South Korean players. He's a Paul main, so he doesn't play Dragunov or Jack 7. Paul is the other character. He's actually an American character. He looks really weird, but yeah. Anyways, he's placed first in 3 different tournaments this year at Battle Arena Melbourne, Combo Breaker 2018, Dama Germany. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. There was a tournament in Germany, I believe. And then he placed second in Fighting Game Challenge 2018. So he had a great year so far, and I mean, Evo is the next step for him, and he's, I believe, ranked number 2. So he's looking for that Evo Championship that he could possibly take this year.
He also placed first in the Evo Championship series in Japan, and also the final round 2018. So this is the guy to beat, I think, in this year, in this meta, in this patch.
I think so.
I think Nee is the guy to look out for, although JDCR, also known as, the top guy in the world. But I think that Nee is on such a winning streak right now that he has kind of the edge going into this tournament.
Right, exactly. Next up, we have Saint from South Korea as well. He's a Jack 7 main. You'll definitely see him in the top 8 for sure. He had a bit of a rough year, but he had a great year last year. He made it, I believe he was second, or did he take Evo last year? I'm not sure.
He was second last year.
Right, he was second. He lost to JDCR.
Won Evo last year.
Right. So Saint
But he won the year before.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of been back and forth between JDCR and Saint, and Nee has sort of kneed his way into the middle of them. But yeah, so he placed 4th in Combo Breaker. He placed 2nd in Battle Arena Melbourne, which is notable. But then he placed 7th in the Tekken World Tour and Korean Masters, and then he placed 13th in the Beast Arena Hong Kong, which was not his best tournament. That's for sure.
Maybe he's just really trying to change up the levers.
It's true, yeah.
Getting ready.
He's known to change his fight stick quite often. Or
really trying to find the perfect groove for what it is that he's doing at the moment.
Right, exactly. Next up, we have Q-Dans from South Korea as well. He's a Devil Jin main. I think you'll definitely see him in the top 8 as well. Q-Dans is a great player. He placed 1st in Fighting Game Challenge 2018, 9th at Combo Breaker, 17th at Battle Arena Melbourne, not his best tournament either, and 9th in the Tekken World Tour Korea Masters as well. So he's sort of had a roughish year in terms of these tournaments so far. But we'll see if he can pull out better than his previous tournaments.
So Chanel is the next guy that you want to highlight, and Chanel is one of the guys that we talked about before with that 2D fighting game character brought into 3D, with throwing around some Akuma, some Eliza. So this is kind of the guy to look out for those twist-ups, those mix-ups that people aren't prepared for as much.
Absolutely. He plays a lot of different characters, but not nearly as much as Kokoma, a player that I actually don't know much about, but he's South Korean as well. This doesn't surprise anyone. He plays Dragunov, Geese Howard, the character from King of Fighters. He also has projectiles and meter. So you'll see he plays similarly, in a similar fashion to Akuma, in that he can cancel a lot of his moves if he has meter. He also plays Devil Jin and Kazumi, which are all the 3 top-tier characters, and Geese Howard to mix things up. He placed 3rd in Fighting Game Challenge 2018, 13th in Combo Breaker, 7th at Battle Arena Melbourne, and 2nd at the Tekken World Tour Korea Masters. So he went up against JDCR, but lost. I'm sure it was a good match. I actually didn't get to see that.
Tell me about someone who isn't Korean.
I'll tell you, this is the fan favorite from America, Anakin Skywalker. No, he's not Skywalker, but his name is Anakin. He's a Jack 7 main. You'll see that he placed first in Texas Showdown 2018, but I'm not entirely sure all these South Korean players were at this tournament, so that I didn't see this tournament. But he placed 7th at Combo Breaker and 5th at Final Round. I hope that he goes far, and I hope we see him in top 8. He doesn't always make it to top 8, but I'm sure this year he wants to win. He's got to do it.
Placing first at Texas Showdown is the precursor for winning Evo.
Yes,
it's a desert setting. You can do it well. I got you.
Clearly.
All right. Who else is a non-Korean player to look out for?
Yeah. So, I mean, so far we've gone in order of ranking. So you'll see that Anakin's in 7th and Noroma from Japan is in 8th. So bottom of the list, we've got Jack 7 main. He also has been known to play Shaheen, which is a really cool character that I've been trying to learn. I like Shaheen. He's from the Middle East somewhere. I'm not really sure. Just generic Middle Eastern person in a video game. But he's also really cool in that he can kick some ass. He also plays Dragon Up, so we'll see some top tier play from him. He plays 9th at Battle Arena Melbourne, 3rd at the Tekken World Tour Korea Masters, and 5th at Evo Japan, which is pretty impressive. That was a tough... I think I saw some of it, so it was a tough showing at Evo Japan.
There you go.
First year.
So those are a few of our top players to look out for. So in your opinion, who do you think is the guy to win the tournament?
I hope it's Anakin, but honestly, I think JDCR is really he wants to defend his title here, and I think if you just looked at his performance this year, you wouldn't think that he's doing so well. But I think he's ready, and he's ready for the pressure of the Evo stage in Mandalay Bay. I'm not sure if that's exactly where it's going to be. The Tekken tournament is smaller, so they don't necessarily get the prime showing on the main stage, but they might get a large stage anyways. But anyways, I think it's gonna be like Knee and JDCR on the top, and we'll see who takes home the victory.
Well, you have yours, and again, as always, I'm going to bring in the dark horse opinion. My dark horse for this tournament, John Deding.
John Deding.
He's fucking huge. This guy's built like a linebacker. He's massive.
No,
and
he's
I
a
think
crowd
anybody
favorite
who has
sure.
that amount of real life muscle and like fitness and just kind of buff, buff with shoulders, he's gonna be good at a fighting thing. My dark horse champion is going to be John Deding.
He's an exciting person to watch. He always makes really funny faces at the camera. When there's pause when you win a match, the other player has to take some time to compensate and to figure out what's going on. And John Deding, I think at the previous tournament he was at, I think it was DreamHack I think it was DreamHack. He was just looking at the camera, just giving a dead stare. It was the funniest thing in the world. But he's been known. He's a silly guy, so I like him a lot.
Dude is buff.
And he's buff.
AF.
He's buff. Be on the lookout for
Julien, if I don't want to be like John Deding and work out at the gym, watching JDCR do his minuscule, pathetic pumps while John Deding is lifting, hundreds of pounds, how can I play this game?
You can. I mean, we already mentioned that you can play this game on PS4 and PC currently. I'm not sure if it's on Xbox One, but. Needless to say, if you want to be going to tournaments, you should have a PS4 compatible controller. That's typically where you can play it. If you're lucky, like people in Chicago, in terms of American citizens, people who live in America, you can possibly go to a cool arcade known as Galloping Ghosts, I think. arcade where they have a Tekken 7 setup there. So they have they have the Tekken 7 cabinet there. I haven't seen any arcades around lately because arcades are dead in America, but I'll be sure to keep my eye out. But definitely if you're in Korea or in Japan, I'm sure there's a Tekken 7 arcade cabinet somewhere in your local arcade nearby. I don't know.
It is also available on Xbox One.
I thought so. Yeah, it didn't seem like a game that would be PS4 exclusive.
So it's cross-platform, but to play in tournaments, you do need that PS4 compatibility. Bring your own controller for Evo.
Right.
In any case, Julien, I think that pretty much concludes our Tekken 7 coverage. If you want to add anything at the end.
I think that this game is absolutely worth learning. It's a huge learning curve, but there's a lot of fun to be had in this game. It's a huge learning curve in terms of, higher level play. But the game is really fun to play, even though if you're just mashing buttons. So I highly suggest you get this game. I think this is the best fighting game to come out in 2017. And 2, I highly suggest you watch Evo. I think it's really fun to watch these games being played at such a high level, and then you sort of understand why these people spend so much time playing these games, because it's really fun.
Watch those wall carry combos in the pools. Watch the Korean front dashing in the finals. I want to see all of that important stuff. So Julien, thank you so much for allowing me to really take your masterclass in Tekken 7 as far as I'm concerned. What do you think is going to be the next game that we'll cover for Evo?
That I want to dedicate, there was a recent announcement at E3 for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So I'd like to cover at least one of the Smash Bros. Games. I wanted to fit both of them in the same episode, but there's a lot to cover, especially for Melee. So we'll probably just do Melee, and then we'll do Smash 4, and then we'll see what game comes after that, because that's the limit of my knowledge when it comes to fighting games at Evo.
All right. Well, we'll both be learning at that point, but you obviously have the executive advantage.
I'm
so
thinking
look
about
for
getting Blaze Blue. We'll see. I don't know.
So look for the Smash stuff coming up soon. I'm excited to talk about the only ones that I've actually really played, which is Smash and Dragon Ball.
Wait, Dragon Ball FighterZ is in Evo. I forgot.
Yeah. So Smash coming up next. We'll try to smash both of them into one, but at least we'll cover the one that's been there for
many years.
13 years?
No. There was a gap at some point for Melee. It's been there for at least 5 years, though. In a row.
A very long time, a very old and traditional game that's near and dear to our hearts growing up with it, as close as we were to the GameCube.
Definitely.
So, Julien, bring it home.
Thanks so much for coming out to this sweet video. Smash that like button. Definitely check out all our other content. We have a podcast every single Monday where we don't just talk about fighting games. We talk about what's relevant in nerd culture and in the rest of the world. We talk about politics all the time, and we have some strong opinions. I think it's worth listening to. You can check it out on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and on YouTube, of course. And we also have, if you're interested in shooters, we have an Overwatch commentary where we talk about the week in Overwatch League, where we cover more esports. So we like to talk about esports on this channel, and we have a bunch of Let's Plays up, so go ahead and check those out. We have a lot of content.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep,
bye.